do you feel like your husband is just not that interested in you? That perhaps you are part of the growing statistic that have a higher desire than your spouse. And I want you to know that you're not alone. You might be a part of a smaller statistic. So generally speaking, it is the flip side that the woman has a lower desire. But there are so many just like you that have a higher desire than their husband. And so we just want to kind of do this video. I just want you to know from the get-go that we're just so sorry for the struggle that you're feeling, for the pain that you're in, those feelings of rejection, the shame. You're not alone and just feeling confused. This wasn't the way it was supposed to be. And I know for some of you, there's perhaps a fear that your husband will cheat on you, or honestly, that if this keeps it up, you're going to cheat on him, you know, and just that pain and frustration and, you know, the conversations that you've been having that are just seeming to go nowhere, and just that feeling of just pure disappointment, you know, just not able to get the intimacy that you crave so much. And so I want you to know that craving intimacy, craving being with your spouse is healthy. It's of God. And God designed sex for the both of you, for husband and wife.
That's right.
And so we really want to kind of dive in and help more, give you some reasons perhaps for why, maybe some tips to kind of help you move forward as well on your journey. But just ultimately know that wanting to be with your husband is healthy and excellent. It's good. It's of God. And just that, you know, we're just kind of ready to kind of dive into it.
But before we dive into that, we are so excited because we are about to launch our first beta group for our new online course.
Yes. So if you are ready to kind of move forward and improve your sexual connection with your spouse, let us know. We would be so excited to have you join us. So we're going to cover topics basically dealing with being able to see the design of sex that God created, what that actually looks like, life stressors that get in the way, things that could be blocking you from your intimacy. We also have a sensual system that we'll cover, and then kind of the roadblocks to that along the way. And ultimately just being able to have more fun and connect physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So if you are interested, please click the link down below. Ladies, schedule with me. Gentlemen, schedule with Andrew. And just to kind of have a discovery call to see if you'd be a good fit. So if you are watching this on the replay, check the link down below as well, because it may be up for, you can join our wait list, or it might be up already. So we are super excited. This is also the cheapest it will be, because it is a beta group. So it'll be a much smaller, more intimate group. So we'd love to have you. All right, so let's cover some reasons your husband may not be as interested as you are in intimacy. And just kind of upfront, the list isn't exactly exhaustive. Intimacy can be really complicated. So you might even have a few of these on here that could be reasons, or, you know, just they're mixed together. But nonetheless, we have kind of a list that'll be really helpful for you, just to kind of get some ideas of perhaps where you might be.
All right, so first, chemical complications. So for example, if your husband's testosterone levels are low, it's going to impact his desire. And that could be something as simple as just scheduling a meeting with your doctor and maybe getting testosterone.
And I want to empathize though with the ladies too, because sometimes the guys won't do it.
True.
You know, so again, that's kind of where it's complicated, because it might be just as simple as going to the doctor, but again, you know, having your husband willing to go to the doctor. You know, I think another thing too that's really important is that men do not like to feel like failures.
That's right.
So if they feel like a failure in the bedroom, they're going to run the opposite direction and avoid it at all costs. So I think another thing is that just, and I don't want to stereotype people, but there's a lot in the younger generation that are very computer savvy, like brilliant on the computer. And they didn't exactly develop, perhaps your husband's someone who didn't develop these amazing social skills and knowing how to be with a woman. And now that they're in this position, you know, they have this persona of being brilliant and excellent, super successful on the computer, and they head off to the bedroom and they're not quite so stellar, and they feel awkward and uncomfortable, and so they avoid it. They kind of, well, you know, I'm going to go back over here to my zone where I am a rock star, I'm successful, and you know, so again, that feeling like a failure is an easy way that they're going to run away. And again, that goes also into any of dysfunctions.
It's true.
So if they're having sexual performance issues, again, that goes right back to that failure, or even fear that they're going to have a problem in the bedroom. That's another reason they're going to avoid and run the other direction.
And that's actually going to impact more than just their desire. It's literally going to impact their ability to become aroused, because the more and more they fail, the more and more they're going to anticipate failure in the future, which means it's going to be harder and harder to become turned on in the first place.
And like also there is performance anxiety.
Yes.
So especially in relation to any dysfunctions. So there's an example we had at school, basically kind of imagine one of those like 4-post beds, and you're on one post, say your husband's on the bedpost looking down at you guys making love. Well, if he's on the bedpost looking down, in a sense he's going to spook it. Like you're not in your body, you're not present. The body feels being observed, and it doesn't relax, it doesn't feel comfortable, and honestly it gets really uncomfortable and uptight, and it doesn't promote you to fully feel all the sensations. And that's something as simple as come off that bedpost, relax, get in your body, being able to be present. And again, a lot of people do struggle with that performance anxiety. Also, any mental health issues that might be going on, and that's a massive array of those, but depression, anxiety, all these things can really hinder your lovemaking and being able to connect. I mean, if you're not able to, in a sense, love yourself, it's really hard to love someone else and love your spouse.
That's right.
So that's just a really easy one. And if there's marriage problems, if there's all this tension, or if your husband feels like you're criticizing him all the time, it's hard for him to want to make the effort to go connect. I mean, they definitely go together.
They absolutely do.
If there's just so much tension and fighting and frustration, it's hard to really connect in the bedroom. And honestly, you don't want to just connect physically.
Right.
You want to make sure you are emotionally connected.
Right.
So, being able to figure out, okay, maybe we need to work first on that marriage part, is something to consider.
Another reason your spouse could be struggling with his intimacy desire level is trauma. Things not just in the present, but also things in the past. Perhaps he was abused as a kid, or just didn't receive the kind of love that he needed to as a child. And unfortunately, that can sometimes lead to addictions. That's another thing that your husband may be struggling with.
Well, and a lot of people have addictions that didn't have trauma as well.
True.
Especially porn. If he's in a position, even currently, where, he's having his sex life more privately.
Yes, true.
That is something that can definitely hinder your relationship. Also there is, a smaller percentage, but there is infidelity or homosexuality tendencies. Again, I really do think that's a smaller percentage, but, it is something definitely to, at least mention.
Again, intimacy can be complicated, but hopefully we gave you something to think about. One thing that's not complicated, however, the Bible consistently says that sex is good in marriage. Check out our intimacy playlist for lots more videos on that.
So let's dive into just simply going over some suggestions, some ideas that might kind of help point you in the right direction. So to begin, kind of start a little bit with looking basically at yourself. What are you feeling? What are you going through? Why does it matter to you? What is going on just inside of you? Not just looking at your husband and all the things that he's not doing right or wrong, or that it irritates you, annoys you, all those things. But just simply, how are you feeling on the inside? And another thing that's really key is not just the anger that you feel towards him, but kind of taking that off a little bit, and what's underneath that anger. Is it the rejection that you felt as a child that you're now feeling again? Or, is it just feeling that perhaps you struggle with body image, and now this is just, made your body image issues just be so much more because you feel like that's the reason your husband's not into you. Just really kind of processing a little bit that internal place, I think, is a good kind of start versus just the, pointing fingers part. Another thing to consider is what you're desiring. Is it really realistic? So if you're in basically a sexless marriage, it is completely healthy and normal to want to be intimate with your spouse. That's completely normal. But I do mention this because I know that I've had some clients that have had extreme trauma and ultimately could have sex all day long, all the time. And that may not be realistic for your husband.
Right.
Another example is perhaps you have a husband that is either, a firefighter who's gone like every however many days, or,
that's good,
or someone that comes home extremely late at night, and then he's got to get up the next day. He may be really too exhausted.
That's true.
If you want intimacy every single day, all the time. So some of that, just kind of sitting back and looking at your relationship with your spouse, and is what you're looking for really realistic?
That's
and again,
good,
like I said before, if you're not really connecting, it is completely healthy. You are completely in the right, and it's so normal to want to connect. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just kind of, giving you a little point to kind of consider, basically just kind of checking in with your expectations.
Also, begin or continue this conversation with your spouse in a safe place. It's probably not a good idea to bring up your disappointment after making love.
Absolutely not. And also it's really important not only that you share with your spouse, but also that you listen to your husband.
Yeah.
What is he feeling? What is he going for? And it's going to be perhaps a challenge. You might have to kind of really work hard at helping create a space that he feels super vulnerable.
It's true.
This isn't necessarily a one-time conversation.
No.
This is going to be ongoing.
Yeah.
You want to be able to hopefully maybe even perhaps share a little bit as you go. He might not be able to handle everything that you're feeling all at one time,
True.
But just to really be able to allow a place that he can feel vulnerable and not criticized, but that you can have that kind of safe conversation. When you are both ready, go ahead and start making some steps in the right direction.
That's right.
Specific steps to you and your marriage and what you're going through. So it may simply be, medication, a visit from the doctor. Perhaps you need to move into marriage therapy or sexual retraining. Sometimes it can be as simple as just really getting some more positive sex education for the two of you.
It's true.
So those are some ideas to kind of start. Another suggestion that is just really, really wonderful, if your husband's willing, it may take some time to kind of, explain and get him to a place that he's willing, but hopefully he'll be willing.
But it works.
It's so good. So scheduling sex, I know it sounds so weird, but it has really, really helped so many couples that I've worked with. And so basically all it is the fact that you're taking the pressure off of the low desire spouse and allowing them to not feel obligated or guilty the times that you're not scheduled. And then it also builds anticipation and excitement for the time that it is scheduled. So I know it feels like, oh, you're taking the spontaneous out of it, but you really scheduled dates.
Right.
And we don't have a bad time because we scheduled the fact that we went to dinner. And when you schedule, you can also just schedule intimacy. It doesn't have to be intercourse. You can schedule time just for the two of you to be together. And if it leads to that, wonderful. But you want to take the pressure off, especially if your husband is feeling this place of pressure. It's not going to be a space that he's going to continually move towards.
If he feels like he's going to fail every time, he's going to run away from it.
Yeah, so you really want to take that pressure off, and honestly, scheduling is great. And again, we do also have some other videos that can kind of, explain that a little bit more clearly for you. We hope these tips helped, and I just want you to know, we're aware that it's easier for us to just share some ideas, share some tips than it is perhaps for you to actually execute them, because give yourself grace. You're in a marriage with two people.
That's right.
And you both have to be willing to work at it and to be able to connect, and that it does take the two of you. And so I pray that your husband is able to be willing and that he is able to help basically get to a place where he can fully satisfy you and that you feel truly loved the way God designed for you to feel.
That's right.
So also don't forget to check out our course.
Please,
We'd love to have you join us. Make sure you click that. Also check out these other great videos.
Don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll be notified when we drop a new video. And also, if you know someone else who this video would be helpful for, share it with them.
Give us a thumbs up and we will see you in the next one. Bye. Guys.